Hey everybody, what's happening? It is Tommy Rosen. It is Thursday evening at 5 p.m. in Los Angeles, California. And if you're watching this, you are indeed a part of the Recovery 2.0 Move Beyond coaching program. Welcome to Thursday. We are approaching the holidays, and that is a very exciting and somewhat daunting and perhaps even triggering time for all of us. Last week we spoke quite a bit about food and family, and we're gonna begin right there again to continue on some of those discussions, and we're gonna move into a discussion about spiritual experience and a discussion on this concept called higher power, which seems to be of relevance to all of us, whether we are coming at our path of recovery through a theistic viewpoint, meaning a viewpoint having to do with God or a God of your understanding, or if you're coming at this through an agnostic or atheist viewpoint, approaching recovery from a more spiritual but non-theistic or not really dealing or interested in looking at this idea of God. But we're going to get into that a little bit tonight. It's going to have a lot of, I think by the end of it, hopefully we'll all be willing to explore these ideas a little bit further, perhaps, than we already have. But before we begin, let us tune in tonight. So bring the palms together at the heart. Rub the palms. As we do each week, each session, we tune in with a mantra. Bring the thumbs again. And the mantra is Om. Now, Om divine spark in all things. Gurudev Namo, I bow to these divine teachings, the teachers and saints that have come before, and the inner teacher, my inner guidance system. I bow to that. Let's take a deep inhale. We'll chant it together 3 times. Om Namo Gurudev. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev. Inhale deeply. Pause this breath and feel the fullness of your lungs, the lifted, uplifted nature of your heart. And exhale. Beautiful. So it's great to be with you guys this evening. Looking back on some of our love missions. Now, you guys have had a bunch of work going on. On Mondays, obviously, we go over the Recovery 2.0 book, and we're about to read Chapter 5 for this coming Monday. And if you haven't read Chapters 3 and 4 previously, then catch up on that reading and join us if you can. And we'll be through Chapter 5 for Monday. The video that we've been watching and thinking about this week is the video by David Wolfe, the epic role of food in overcoming addiction. And I want to start right there. How about David Wolfe, you guys? I mean, there's so much to say about his work in the world, but this is a man who has truly traveled the continents of the earth. And I think he might even have referred to himself as a gastronaut, somebody who has truly worked with and tasted and really, really gone the full distance when it comes to food and exploring what foods are medicinal and how we can use food to heal ourselves, and also looking at the ways that we use food to hurt ourselves, not on purpose, obviously, but inadvertently and through addiction. And we talked a bit about that last week. We talked about sugar and sugar addiction. And David and I, in this conversation, this video, we get into it a little bit. The piece I want to focus on right now is the piece having to do with plants. Now, this video, when I was interviewing David, his comments generally blow my mind because the guy is really on the cutting edge. But this guy, his comments about food and especially the plant kingdom really, really sort of propelled my own thinking further. And so I will reiterate a little bit of what got said, and then I will tell you where I've come to in my new understanding based upon that interview. If you think about the things that you've reached out for in your life, think about, if we're talking about substances, let's say you've reached out for any kind of alcohol. Where does that alcohol come from? Well, if you think about vodka, well, it's coming from potatoes or some other plant source. Or beer, barley and hops, a plant. Or wine from grapes. And you go down the line and you look at any kind of drink, any kind of alcoholic drink, and it's all coming from some form of plant. If you look at the choices that we've chosen in terms of taking drugs, marijuana, a plant. Psychedelic mushrooms, a plant. Speed, a plant. Cocaine, the coca plant. Any kind of opioid, so heroin, morphine, Vicodin, Oxycontin, any of the narcotic pain relievers all come from the opium plant, the poppy plant, right? So all these things that we're reaching for in our life to feel better, the place that we look to feel better is plants. But interestingly, when we're in our addiction, we're reaching towards highly processed forms of plant life. So rather than chewing on coca leaves, we're snorting or shooting or smoking cocaine, which is a highly refined product from that plant. Or in the case of wine, we're crushing grapes and we're fermenting them. We're putting them through a process that creates the alcohol content in them. In the case of marijuana, very often we're putting flame to it and we're pulling in smoke into our lungs to create the effect that we're looking for. In every case, we're looking to the plant kingdom and we're reaching out to it, and we're tainting whatever the original plant was in order to help us to feel better. Now, David in this talk speaks about alkalinity, this concept of, when we spoke about it last night, mineralization of the body, the remineralization of the body. That's what we're really after to feel good. And that on the physical plane, we really are what we eat. And David would extend that to say we are what we can digest. So our ability to digest food well is going to be a big factor in the way that we're feeling. Of course, the choices of what to eat is going to be a huge factor as well. If we're eating food that is going to be acidic in nature, it's going to demineralize the body. It's going to move us in a more acidic direction. If we're eating foods that are nutrient dense, mineral rich foods, they're going to typically move us into a more alkaline direction. So follow me now. This is really for me the revelation what David was sharing. You remember in the talk I asked him, imagine a heroin addict shows up at your door. How would you treat him? What would you say? And he said, well, right away we'd get him on a cleanse, detoxification, and I think he talked about getting him to sweat in a sauna and then cold plunge, sweat in a sauna and then cold plunge, and that's that expansion and contraction idea, to expand and then contract and really get the chemicals, the toxins out of the body. He said for the heroin addict, later on in that conversation, he said, really I'd get him started on a regimen of lettuce juice. And if you recall, I was like, well, what's that about? And he said, well, the lettuce, lettuce is from the same family as the poppy plant. And the heroin addict is really just looking for the soporific compounds that he would normally find in the poppy plant through heroin or some other narcotic. But he could just as easily find that, or she could just as easily find that in lettuce juice. Now, that's a revolutionary concept. And by no means are we saying that we can cure the heroin addicts of the world by feeding them lettuce juice. But for a person who's on a path of recovery, or for a person who's even detoxing off of heroin, David's suggesting that by reaching to this other plant in its pure form, lettuce, that it's going to have some of those same properties. And so imagine a rehab detoxification experience that's built around this concept. And the concept is primarily this. We're reaching for plants to feel better as addicts. And we should do precisely the same thing on our path of recovery. How do we do that? We reach for high, nutrient-dense, high-quality organic juices, which is to say we're juicing the plant kingdom, taking it in its purest form, getting all the nutrients, getting the vitamins and minerals, getting the enzymatic activity going, which is going to flush the system, hydrate the system, detoxify the system, and move us through a process of detoxification more quickly and more effectively than we might otherwise. Also suggesting this idea of cravings being lessened through the process of eating plants in the form in which nature intended them. So rather than reaching for these fermented plants and alcohol or any of the the plants that we process into very powerful drugs, we're talking about reaching for broccoli, chard, kale, cucumber, carrots, peppers, grains, whole grains, everything that's alive, particularly the green leafy vegetables, to bring our system over to a more alkaline state. The basic premise is this: addiction is dis-ease. As I've said, it's distance from ease. When we don't feel well, we tend to reach outside of ourselves for something that makes us feel better. So if what's going to make us feel better in our system is an alkaline state, then part of our process of recovery is to bring ourselves back to an alkaline state so that we'll feel better and the impulse to reach outside of ourselves will be lessened. It's actually a pretty simple idea. And so in my life, and I'm encouraging you guys as much as you can, a couple things. One, bring green, organic, fresh, green juice into your life in pretty big quantities. Now you need to understand, if you're on a very acidic diet, if you eat a lot of meat, if you eat a lot of cheeses, and you eat a lot of breads and pastas and these kinds of foods, when you first start drinking green juice, it can really have a liquid plumber kind of effect on the system, okay? So you need to be mindful. Start with a 16-ounce glass of green juice in the morning. You can try another 16-ounce glass of green juice in the afternoon and see how that does with your system. If it's flushing your system and you're getting diarrhea or you're having those kinds of symptoms, that is not abnormal. And within reason, that's okay, and that should pass in a day or two if you keep going with the green juices. But it's just your body resetting and coming back to a more alkaline state. So look for that. The other thing that I'm going to suggest, and this is not necessarily for right now, but I want you guys to begin, so I want you to begin to start thinking about a time when you can do a juice cleanse. A juice cleanse. Now, this is not necessarily indicated for people who struggle with anorexia or people who struggle with bulimia or other eating disorders. If you're coming to this program and you've got those disorders, it's much more important that you move into a balanced approach to diet. And when you go on a juice cleanse, That is not a balanced approach to diet. That is purposely going through a process that could last 1 or 3 or 5 or 7 days or 14 days or 30 days, depending on how you're doing it, what your system is, and what your goals and what you're trying to achieve is. But the juice cleanse, which typically is done moving into the spring when the weather's getting warmer, or moving into the fall at the end of summer when you're transitioning out of the summer and preparing for the winter and for the fall and the winter season. So these cleanses are very, very powerful. And as I wrote in my book, one of the things that changed my life and I really believe is one of the things that helped me move beyond chronic back pain was when I went on a 30-day Ejuva cleanse, and I write about that in the book. That was a very profound experience for me, and since then, I've done a number of different kinds of cleanses which have lasted different periods of time. Every year, I try to do a cleanse of some kind to reset my digestive tract, to give my body a rest, and to absolutely fill the cells of my body with nutrients, and to only be consuming liquid food for a period of time. Maybe that's 3 days, 5 days, or 7 days, something like that. Because to do that really gives the body a rest, helps you to rejuvenate, and it will keep you young, I feel, in the digestive tract, will really help you. Now, please be mindful of these instructions. Do not go on a cleanse alone without some form of education, support, and really understanding what you're doing. One of the most important things about a cleanse is not just the cleanse itself, but how to come off of the cleanse. My wife, Kia Miller, runs 2 cleanses a year, which are Kundalini yoga-based cleanses. We do yoga in the morning from 7 to 8:30. We pick up our juices for the whole day right next door at this wonderful restaurant called Rawvolution here in LA. And we connect in circle each morning before the yoga class to support each other. And I'm inviting you all right now to come and be a part of our cleanse in the spring and or the fall this year. So the spring is coming up. I'll certainly let you all know when it's going to be. And I'm serious when I say if you can afford the time and you can afford the money, please get on a plane and come here and be with us for a 7-day Kundalini yoga and juice-only cleanse that will absolutely change your relationship to food forever. And I guarantee that you will never think about food the same way again once you go through that experience. Things that we learn through an experience like that are, number one, just how much time we spend buying food, preparing food, eating food, thinking about food, cleaning up after food. Because when you're on your cleanse, you don't do any of that. And one of the comments we get all the time is, I don't know what to do with all the time I have in the day. Isn't that amazing? And another comment we get is, wow, I feel empty in my body, but not hungry. And that's a really interesting, feeling. And of course, the mental clarity that comes from giving your body a rest. And it's just a beautiful process. And again, if you're not struggling with food issues, you're not struggling with, major food disorders, I do want to have an experience with 1 day or 3 days and connect with your flipping down that. But there's something about the plant kingdom. Major part it will in our recovery to wholeness on the path of recovery 2.0. So, diet, juicing, remineralization, the alkalization of the body. These are principles that I live by, and you will notice a profound difference in your life. So I want to begin to educate you guys and encourage you to explore these things for yourself. Of course, if you have questions, I welcome them, and please post them on the Facebook page. I will get to them. I will address them. And if you have questions right now, post them right on our Facebook page inside of tonight's comment that I made. I posted up about where you could come watch this hangout. So I want you to leave your comments right in there so my team can get to it and forward it to me right now. Let's see, we have, I want to jump into this conversation about higher power because it's a doozy. And then we'll get to some questions a little bit later on. A couple of quick technical announcements. I am working with my web team to put a whole bunch of Kundalini Yoga Kriyas, Vinyasa flow yoga sets, and meditations up into our portal. And some of you actually saw them up there, and then you noticed that they were taken away. I was not trying to tease you with content, but we're just having some web challenges, and believe me, they frustrate me as much as they frustrate you. But we'll be getting to those, and so in the next couple of days, you will see a lot more content showing up in our portal. And that's content which is a gift to you. I certainly encourage you to explore. In addition, I will be pointing you to certain things along the way. So I'll say, this is something that I want you to try this week as a challenge, or do this set. It's a challenging set of yoga. I want you to have an experience with it. So those will be in the portal, and as we get to love missions and other assignments, we'll go over that. So if you guys have any questions right now about David Wolf or the food stuff, I'm going to look for those questions right now and see what we have from the group. Okay, let's see now. Okay, so big question here. Let's see. I heard someone recently say that the food we eat isn't just what we put in our mouths, but what we listen to, who we surround ourselves with, and places that we go. Can you speak on that? Thank you. What a wonderful question. So when we talk about the word consumption, we ask ourselves, well, what are we consuming? And we would be remiss in not including all of the senses in what we are consuming. So we've been talking about food, and we had a talk at our last hangout about water as well. So part of what we consume is going to be food and water, and we have underlined the importance and the relevance of that for people, for all people, but especially for people in recovery from addiction. In terms of consumption, though, I'm always looking, I'm always considering, what are my eyes consuming? What am I looking at? And that's going to take a moment to really unpack that idea. I really have a hard time with clutter. So in my home, I notice if I get into one of my ADD states, right, and I'm having a difficult week as far as organization and clutter, I'll come into my office and there's like just stuff piled on my desk. To my eyes, it may just appear as stuff cluttered on my desk, but to my psyche, it really is hurtful. Actually, I feel there's something. It's a self-harming behavior, and that I actually need to slow down and take the time to put papers away and organize things. So I walk into a space, if I'm going to work in this space, where I feel like I have spaciousness where I can actually work. If I walk into my bedroom and my bed is not made, ever since I went to rehab, literally when they taught me how to make my bed every morning, that's been an issue for me. So when I walk into my room, if I haven't made the bed, or if my wife and if we haven't put the bed together, I notice it. And it's like an area of a lack of clutter. It's not a problem. So it's not like an obsessive compulsive thing. I just noticed, like, wow, I love my bedroom and my space, particularly when it's like neat and made up and there's like a certain sacredness and reverence to it. And when I return to it at night and I'm going to get in bed, it's just a wonderful thing to get into a well-made bed. It's so lovely. And, you know, I don't have maid service coming into my bedroom. So it's up to me. I'm the one who has to make my own bed. And that helps me in terms of the consumption of what I'm seeing in my home. When I walk into the closet in my bedroom, if my clothes are all over the place, or if I have too many clothes and I need to literally empty out the old clothes out of my closet, that feeling of letting go, of releasing, all we're doing is releasing the old, letting go of what we no longer need, making room for new energy to flow in. What a wonderful process. And I'll be honest with you right now, I would be ashamed for any of you to see what my garage looks like at this point in time. So what do? I literally I've booked a 4-hour session with a personal organizer to go into my garage and help me with it. Why? Is it because I'm lazy? It's actually not. I'm not a lazy person. There's things that get into clutter in my home and I'm not good with it. I actually need help. So this is me actually taking care of myself, and I consider that money well spent. So if you need someone to come help you so that what you're seeing and the vibe of your home is in order, do it. Spend that money, because you're going to be getting rid of the old and creating pathways for new energy to come in. Really great process. Now, what else are we talking about when we talk about consumption? Obviously, the consumption of media. What are you looking at each day? On television, on your computer, on your smartphone? What are the visuals that you're taking in? I know for me, and this is just my opinion, you know, I don't watch the news any longer. I don't do that because I don't find that it makes me feel good. It actually hurts me. And it's not that I'm an uninformed person. I get a lot of information from different sources. I just don't take it in on the format of the evening news on television. I read a lot on the internet, and I get the information that I need to stay informed about the things that are of interest to me and about the things that I feel I have some influence over. But what happens for me is I'll watch the news and hear about a variety of different things from around the world which are unbelievably painful and about which I can do nothing. And I start to feel that feeling of powerlessness, and I start to feel that feeling of, wow, boy, oh boy, how are we ever going to overcome it? And I get into that negativity, and my mind can really run with that. Instead of that, I will watch a piece of uplifting spiritual media. I will watch a show about the history of yoga. I will watch a show about jazz music. I'll watch a show about the Grateful Dead. I'll watch a show about art or dance or song or religion or prayer or spirituality, and it will reconnect me back in with myself. Also, what books are you reading? You know, for me, it's, you know, what do I got on the desk right now? Well, let's see. I've got this incredible book. It's called Distilled Spirits. I think you probably see that backwards. Distilled Spirits by Don Lattin. It's a story about getting high, then sober, with a famous writer, a forgotten philosopher, and a hopeless drunk. And it's the story of Bill Wilson, founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, and Aldous Huxley and Gerald Hurd, and these incredible people. It's of interest to me. And I find it really uplifting, and it connects me. So what are we looking at? Got to be really mindful of this stuff. If you're watching television and it makes you feel amped up, it makes you feel stressed, it makes you feel angry, it makes you feel lonely, it makes you feel tired, stop. Please stop. And don't buy into the idea that you're somehow a bad person if you don't watch the news and you're not informed. listen, open your eyes, meditate, sit down and practice yoga, help your community, your friends and your family. That's what we can do in the world. That's what we're able to do. So let's empower ourselves to affect with positive energy the sphere. Where's our sphere of influence? Let's put our energy there. If you're somebody that needs to watch the news for your job, or you need to be informed on a certain level because of work that you do, so be it. What can you do if you watch that and you're getting those really negative feelings? Go out and take a walk. Go to a meeting. Connect with a therapist. Drink a green juice. Do some meditation. Take your shoes off and put your feet in the grass. Something to get reconnected to your own self, because the news can be super disembodying. So that's a really wonderful question about consumption. Also, obviously, what we're listening to in terms of the music choices that we make, in terms of the noise that we have around us. I know people, parents with multiple children in the house. Sometimes they can lose their temper because their kids are so loud, or there's roughhousing, and it's like they just can't get their kids to calm down. And often, by the way, diet has a lot to do with that. But when I go to visit my 5 nieces and nephews, and I love them so much, and I love to roughhouse with them too, and we play a lot. But sometimes it gets so loud that I just have to leave for a minute. I'm like, this is affecting me in a negative way now, and my sensitivity to noise is pretty huge. I notice that when I go back to New York City as well. When I go on the street, it's like, wow, people live in this noise year round, and it's just difficult. So we need quiet, by the way. We need quiet. So how can we cultivate silence in our life for periods of time each day? Sometimes in order for your mind just to calm down, you have to have silence. So important. Wonderful question. I hope that helps to answer that. Let's look at what other questions we have related to the current issues at hand. Okay, we're getting a lot of questions from you guys right now. Wow. Hang on. Okay. Okay, so a couple things here. There's 2 technical questions that are coming up. Number one, Donna A. Donna's asking, how do I go about having my friend accept the invitation to partner here with me? So for those kinds of questions, Donna, please email right away to support@recovery2.0.com. Of course, the point is spelled out POINT. Support@recovery2.0.com to answer that question. Another one here, is there a way to connect the Facebook group in another format, like a forum, for instance? I've been involved in ongoing forums, and they are of tremendous value. I'm not sure the name of the person who posed that question. I'd like to ask my team to make sure to include the names in posting questions. But whoever that was, that's a great idea, and I'd like you to email, again, that same question to support@recovery2point0.com. Thank you. All right, Michael Short. Hey, Michael. Michael's asking, what about organic green powders? Yes, absolutely. So we talked a little bit about powders last week. Chlorella and spirulina, wonderful green powders. Make them a part of your life. Very alkalizing, very nutritional. And there are many other powders out there. You can do some research, but you're looking for high quality organic powders based in real whole food sources. So whole food sources, that's going to be key. Wonderful question from Brenda. Brenda L says, we are diabetics. Is it safe to do cleanses? Now so I'm going to tell you my answer, but I'm going to preface my answer by saying you absolutely must talk to a medical doctor about the kind of cleanse you would be doing and what its effects might be on somebody who's diabetic. My answer is I encourage you to have that discussion with your physician and to give this a try, particularly if you're dealing with type 2 diabetes. With type 2 diabetes, that is a lifestyle disease. It is a preventable disease, but if you have it, I believe in my heart of hearts, I will come out and tell you what my belief is. I do not have science to back this up. I do have anecdotal evidence. My belief is that type 2 diabetes is and can be a reversible condition. I absolutely believe that. And again, you're going to have to speak to your medical doctor, preferably a naturopathic doctor, somebody who's hip to alternative forms of healing along with the Western medical approach as well. That's an excellent question. Thank you for that. So let's see here. We've got, someone's asking me here to repeat my beliefs on sugar. So I'm going to go down these questions if they have to do with food. The other questions I'll deal with at the end. My beliefs on sugar. I believe sugar is perhaps the most addictive and most dangerous drug on our planet. I believe that sugar weakens the body, weakens the immune system, and is hyper addictive. I believe that high fructose corn syrup is an even worse form of sugar for your body. Not the least reason of which is because a lot of this is now coming from genetically modified corn. So they're getting the high fructose corn syrup from corn that's been genetically modified, and we have no idea what the effect of that is on the human body, not to mention the adverse effects of genetic modification on the planet Earth and the concerns that we all have about planting and farming and moving towards organic farming, not away from it. I think sugar, what can I say? I think it's a gateway drug. I think it leads to other addictions. And I'm noticing in my own life that when I'm particularly hitting the sugar, that the chatter of my addictive thinking goes up. The volume goes up. So I feel a little more caught in addictive thinking. I'm a little less comfortable. And guess what happens when I'm a little less comfortable? I start thinking about reaching outside of myself to find comfort. Now, I am 23 years in recovery, and I've learned one day at a time to make better choices. But this sugar thing, you guys, it is a serious problem for so many people. And so what, part of this cleanse suggestion is to really break that addiction altogether, nip it in the bud, and to be able to reset and start from scratch, because some of us have been sugar addicts for decades. And that's not something, I'm sorry to say, it's not something you just walk away from. There needs to be a transitional period of detoxification. One interesting note about the sugar thing. Alcoholics in particular have a very unique relationship with sugar because alcohol is breaking down into sugar in the body. So when you take an alcoholic off of their alcohol, naturally there are going to be sugar cravings. And there's going to have to be a very conscious approach to moving an alcoholic back to a state of balance. And this is one of the reasons why people are staying in the frequency of addiction as long as they are. It's completely because of sugar. You get off alcohol or other drugs, and what's the joke? What's the cliche of people at AA meetings? They're drinking coffee filled with sugar, they're smoking cigarettes, and they're eating donuts or other bread products or other sugar cookies or whatever it is. It's a cliche, but there's, obviously, as with many cliches, there's some truth to it. You guys, the frequency of addiction is no joke. And many of you have written me and said, Tommy, I want to move out of the frequency of addiction. I'm telling you one of the ways you can do that. This food thing needs to be taken real seriously, and I'll finish on this note. In this lifetime, I wish for you that you can feel what it's like to not be hungry, to not want any food addictively, and to actually have space in between eating events, in between your meals, where your body can fully digest food before you start going after the next bite. I really want you to have the experience of being centered, healthy, with immunity and vitality and a super level of energy, clarity, and wellness. And that's going to start with your relationship with food. And guess what? Your addictive tendencies, look, I know this is going to sound crazy to you guys. I know lots of guys who are struggling around internet pornography. And we know that it's not just limited to guys, that's women too. And there's, what is it, the status? It's the biggest business on the internet, period, is internet pornography. So widespread, to say the least. There is a connection between your diet and looking at pornographic images on the internet. I know how that sounds crazy. How could those things be connected? Because you go over here and you eat addictively and you get into your sugar dance, and all of a sudden it brings you into the frequency of addiction, and you start getting into that haze of addiction, and all of a sudden other addictive behaviors that you've engaged in become more tempting. Make the connection. Change your diet. Do it now. Let's not wait till after the holidays. We talked about it last week. Very simple suggestions. Hydrate yourself. Eat and drink green juices, green vegetables. 80-20 rule. Remember the 80-20 rule? Don't fill up your stomach 100%, just 80%. All of these things are going to begin to make a difference. Start on the herbal teas. Stay away from the sugar. Stay away from refined processed foods and start to move towards whole foods. It doesn't have to happen all at once. This is a gradual, day-by-day process toward greater health. Know that it's possible. Know that you can do it. Know there's a way through every block. All right, let's take a look at some of these other questions. Food-related. Person says, can anyone recommend a juice extractor, make and model? Mid to top range, price depending. So good. You can look at the Champion Juicer Company. You can look at the Breville Juicer Company, my two favorites. Remember, these are juicers. They pull juice out of fruits and vegetables. You can also look at the Vitamix blender and the NutriBullet blender, which is a smaller version. The Vitamix, while it's kind of expensive, I think it's up in the $400 range. It's the kind of thing you'll have for 10 or 15 or 20 years. And that's not a juicer. It doesn't extract juice. It's a very, very high-speed, powerful blender that will break food down so your body, your stomach, doesn't have to do all the hard work of digesting. So my wife and I, every now and then, we'll take a salad, and rather than eating the salad, we'll blend it with a little bit of coconut oil and a little bit of juice and a little bit of water, and we'll make an evening soup, much easier to digest than actually eating the salad itself. So that's just one idea. The Vitamix is a very versatile, incredible thing. So those are my thoughts there. Okay, Ginny G is asking the following question. If you don't want to actually make your own juice, can you recommend where to get it at a reasonable price? There's a Whole Food store where I live, but each juice is $10. Yes. Well, it depends on where you live, really. We're fortunate here. I can get a 32 ounce, what is that, a quart? Is that a quart? I think it might be a quart of juice for $8.50. That's organic green juice for $8.50, a whole quart of it. So if you think about, I'll drink a quart or 2 quarts of juice a day, and that's $16. And in a sense, that's like a meal, right? So that's a very, 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 very healthy, hydrating, nutrient-dense meal for $16. It's not that much money. Now you might think, wow, that sounds like a lot of money for juice. But you see, you're still thinking about it in terms of, oh, I'm going to spend all the money I normally spend, and I'm going to spend $16 more on juice. Actually, you're going to be eating less food because you're going to need less food because you're getting your nutrients from your juice. So you're going to save some money by not eating quite as much food as well. There is that consideration. There's also, Ginny, I want to encourage you to try to start making your own juices because it's really an act of self-love. It's a loving thing to do to prepare your own food. However, if that's impossible, you're going to have to Google fresh juice in your town and see where you can get it. Or see maybe somebody can deliver it for you, but usually that's quite expensive as well. Okay. Okay. I think that's about it for the food questions right now. One more question here. I'm going to begin trying 3 meals a day. Does green juice or smoothie count as a meal? So this really depends on your body type, how much exercise you're doing, how much other food you're eating, and how your energy level is. I encourage you to explore. If you want to try replacing a meal with a juice, if I had to pick one meal, it would definitely be dinner, if you were going to replace a meal with a juice. But you want that juice or smoothie to be really, that's got to have, the nutrients that you need in it. It might have some coconut oil in it. It might have some kale in it, or a banana. Might have some superfoods in it like bee pollen or maca, those kinds of things. And this is all stuff that you can learn about through experimentation and reading. And there's just so much to say about superfoods and smoothies and all this. I'd like to ask you guys if you want me to maybe shoot a video on my favorite superfood smoothies and how I make them. I'm happy to do that and put that up for you. It'd be a joy, actually. So let me know on the Facebook page if that's something that you'd like me to do. All right, so we have about 15 more minutes in the talking part of this. Although I've gone through many of the questions, I do want to touch on this thing called higher power, God, spirituality, great spirit, the universe. Okay. As we go down this path of recovery, if you're in the world of the 12 steps, you're being, on a day-to-day basis, you're being challenged to connect with this thing, this power greater than you. And for some people, that's really difficult, because some of us grow up with religious prejudices, or we've had negative experiences by being a part of some religion, or maybe religion was forced down our throat when we were growing up. I want to talk to you about my understanding of a higher power. My understanding of a higher power is nothing more than my understanding. I only bring it up to, and it's in the hopes that it will encourage you to think in more broad terms about this issue, if in fact the God thing is challenging for you, or spirituality is challenging for you. I'll tell you a story. I usually tell this story in person to people. It's one of my favorite stories. It's a true story from my life. I'll tell it to you now. It'll take just a few minutes. I want you to think back now to the night before you were entering high school, 9th grade. The next day, you're going into 9th grade. And maybe you were in a middle school somewhere, and you were going to a big person's school, and it was nerve-wracking, or you've just taken the whole summer off, and you're wondering, God, what am I going to wear tomorrow? Where have my friends been all summer? God, I hope I can fit in at this new school, or in this continuation of school where I've been. But you remember that night before 9th grade is a pretty nerve-wracking night in the life of a kid. Now, the night before 9th grade, for me, I was at home in New York City, and I was watching TV. And you know how on the television, sometimes they have the sign language person, who's doing sign language. It's like for the hearing impaired. Well, that was on the television for some reason. Like there was a signer on TV, in the bottom corner of the TV. And this is, this is a long time ago. But a commercial comes on, and it's a commercial for kaopectate. And the first words of the commercial are, "Do you have common diarrhea?" And the sign language person goes like that. And I start laughing, to myself, like I'm watching TV, and I'm like, wow, I know the sign language for, common diarrhea. Like, that's funny. So I put it out of my mind. And the next day I went to school, and we had a history teacher named Mr. Brown. And Mr. Brown was a beloved teacher, an amazing guy. He's this big, tall, imposing African-American guy, 6'4", pretty deep voice. And you really didn't mess with Mr. Brown, Nobody wanted to mess with him. And everybody kind of respected him, but nobody wanted to mess with Mr. Brown. You just don't mess with Mr. Brown. Well, it just turned out that he was my history teacher that year in 9th grade. And Mr. Brown comes in the room, and we just keep being all hyperactive, and nothing. It's really wild. Nothing happens. Like, we just keep the energy going, and all of a sudden, Mr. Brown slams his briefcase down on the desk, and everybody comes to attention right away. And he says, "Okay, who can tell me what this means?" And I'm like, oh my God, I know what that is. And my before I even think about anything, my hand goes in the air. And Mr. Brown is startled, to say the least, that I've raised my hand. And he looks at me and he says, "Yes, young man, what is this?" And I said, "Mr. Brown, that's common diarrhea." And Mr. Brown, I don't know that I've ever seen him laugh, but he all of a sudden went, and then held his laugh back, like swallowed his laugh. And I can still see the classmates all around me, like literally with their jaw on the ground, like, "What did you just say? Did you just say common diarrhea to Mr. Brown?" Like, oh my God. And I'm sitting there, and Mr. Brown says, "No, young man, when I do this, this is how I tell the class to be quiet." And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, I just said common diarrhea to Mr. Brown. Can you imagine? I'm sitting there like, oh my God. And my classmates are like, and I'm just there, oh my God. And I just basically became subhuman at that point. Well, the class ended, and I did like my invisibility trick of like trying, doing my best to get out of the room, as quickly as possible. And Mr. Brown says, "Mr. Rosen, if you wouldn't mind staying behind for just a minute." And so I'm standing in front of Mr. Brown's desk, and he's sitting down in his chair and looking up at me. And he says, "Young man, I've been teaching a very, very long time, and no one has ever said anything like that to me. No one has ever said anything like that to me. I need you to tell me how you came to say that to me." And I said, "God, Mr. Brown, I'm so sorry." And he said, No, I need you to tell me how you came to say that." And what I understood was he really needed to know. He needed to know what would have possessed me. So I told him the story that I just told you. And he thought it was the damned funniest thing that he had ever heard in his life. He was laughing so hard, and I was nervously laughing along with him. I mean, he obviously knew that I was telling the truth. There was no way you could make something like that up. And so I became, to all my friends, I became the common diarrhea kid. I could never live that down in ninth grade. But Mr. Brown and I, we became friends. And so what's the point of this story? Well, there's many points to it, but the point I want you guys to realize, what I took away from it was, in the years that followed that event, I obviously never forgot it. And I started thinking about all the things that had to happen for that moment to take place. And I thought, what are the odds that I could live in New York City and be watching TV the night before ninth grade? And I go to a school, by the way, where there's an African-American teacher named Mr. Brown, who happens to use American Sign Language for common diarrhea as his method of telling the class to be quiet. What are the odds that something like that could happen? The unfolding of all those events. And what dawned on me was simply this, that there are things going on in this world that I cannot understand, that I cannot put together, that are beyond my comprehension, but every now and then they come into my life. And that is, to me, a communication from my higher power, directly to me, in a language that I can understand. It's a language of absurdity, a language of irony, a language of coincidence, of synchronicity, that my higher power actually wants to communicate to me, and that this is the chosen language that my higher power has chosen to actually communicate with me. And I can tell you that events as unlikely as that have been taking place, and I've been noticing them in my life ever since. Countless events. And this is why I have people write the weirdness journal. The weirdness journal. And that's what I'm going to ask you to write this week. And we're going to get to that when we talk about our love missions. Higher power will speak to you in the way that you can understand if you are willing to listen, if you are willing to understand it. It is not, in my opinion, a person, a figure like a man with a beard up in the sky, although it could be if that's your image. That works. It's any image, every image that reminds you of the truth, that reminds you of your own heart, that reminds you that you're not alone, that reminds you of your connectedness to all things in the universe. Anything that does this, for me, goes under the heading of higher power. Everything goes under the heading of higher power. Yogi Bhajan, who brought Kundalini Yoga to the West, he used to say, if you don't see God in all, you don't see God at all. So it's really sort of this God thing, for me, this higher power thing, is just this energetic force field that surrounds everything that I'm working my entire life to try to connect with and align with. And sometimes it goes better than other times, but that doesn't mean it's not there. And sure, it's a question of faith. Sure. I can't prove any of this to you or anybody. It just makes sense to me. It makes perfect sense to me. It's been made known to me. And it's the damnedest thing that I can't make it known to you. I just can't. But I can encourage you to try to open your eyes and see beyond what your five senses will tell you. I can encourage you, and I can suggest to you that through faith, extraordinary things happen. And I can suggest to you that, you know, this higher power thing is for real, for real. Even if you don't believe in a God, how about just believe that there's this energetic force field through everything that somehow has an interplay with reality as we experience it. That's enough. Like, you don't need to believe in a Jewish God, a Christian God, an Islamic God, a Sikh God, this God, that God. You don't need to believe in anything that isn't revealed to you. You just have to be open and aware of what is being revealed to you. Part of the reason we practice yoga is to clear out the blockages so that we see more clearly what's going on in and around us. We make that and our life gets better. We make the connection with our breath and our life gets better. We become more aware, more attuned beings. We attune ourselves beyond the frequency of addiction, and all of a sudden it's like things start getting better, and we start to sense and be aware of these spiritual touch points that happen in our life. I hope that makes some sense and is of some use to you. The weirdness journal is really something very special. And normally I will have a sponsee begin their weirdness journal when they're on step 2. It doesn't matter where you're at in your process of the 12 steps or any other spirituality. This week's journaling assignment is going to be the weirdness journal. And what I want you to start to become aware of are all the things that are happening in your life, big or small, that you can't necessarily explain or that represent some form of synchronicity. I'll give you an example. You might be going down the street and you're thinking about your mom, and maybe your mom's name is Julia. And then you pass by a wall, and right on the wall there's a piece of graffiti there, and the graffiti says Julia. That would make it in the weirdness journal. That would be a small, interesting thing. Oh, that's interesting. What is that about there? So we don't need to figure out what it is. Whenever anything strange is coming into your day, write it down in the weirdness journal. Write it down. Get a journal for this. If you don't already have a journal, get a journal, open it up to a fresh page, write weirdness journal, and this whole week keep it close by and begin to notice the things in your life that go beyond your immediate explanation of things. Okay? Hang on. You can reach up there and close that. You can reach up and close that vent. Sorry, you guys. So that's the weirdness journal. And that's just a little bit of this thing about spirituality and higher power. We just have to begin to be interested in the things that are being revealed to us. Hang on a quick second. Sorry, everybody. So that's just a little bit. Now, obviously, we're going to have we can have a multiple decades discussion, and I encourage us to do that, by the way, about a higher power and how it reveals itself to you in your life. Mostly, what I want you to understand is every one of us has a part of something spiritual within us. For me, in the language that I would use, I would say we have a piece of the divine within each of us. There's a piece of the great spirit of the universe of God within each one of us. It connects us all. It's part of the reason why we can bring each other to laughter. We can bring each other to tears. We can connect in a heartfelt way. We have a commonality. All of us have the same thing within us. And I want us to begin to sense that and feel that, and we do that through the mantra Sat Nam. That's one way, chanting mantra. We also do that through the practice of yoga. We do that through writing. We do that through praying and meditation. But you have to begin to set an intention. Like, if you say to yourself, I actually want to explore my relationship with God or higher power. I want to explore it. I don't even know if that thing exists, but I'm curious in knowing. And I intend, I'm setting my intention, I intend to explore the more spiritual side of my life. And I'm going to do that through my morning sadhana practice. I'm going to do that through the food that I eat. I'm going to do it through all the relationships that I experience. And I'm going to set an intention so that I can bring that intention into my life. The weirdness journal, believe it or not, is going to help you a lot with that. So it's journaling assignment. And again, you guys can ask questions during the week, and please post your weirdness, whatever weirdness is coming up in your life. God, because it's going to be exciting and fun and interesting, and this is really the stuff. So love that stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there for right now, and I want to take a look at some of the remaining questions for this evening. Let's see. Okay, a lot of stuff coming out here. So. All right. So this person asked, please speak on new sobriety and forgiving yourself. All right. Very important topic. We come into recovery, and often we have done a lot of harm to ourselves and to others. We've done things that we're ashamed of, that we don't ever want anybody to know. And we're talking about self-forgiveness, self-compassion. I can tell you that the feelings that come up around the behaviors that we've done have a connection, have a purpose. The feelings themselves have a purpose. And the purpose is to let you know that in some way, shape, or form, you've been out of alignment with your own heart. Now that you're in recovery, you're getting into alignment with your own heart. That is the biggest, most profound first step that any of us can do. So, yes, we may have done things that we want to fix or that we wish we hadn't done. And we may even have done things that we feel we can never fix. I'm here to tell you that there is a way through every block. We begin by getting on the path of recovery. As you know, I advocate for the 12 steps. That was powerful in my life. And in terms of forgiving ourselves, forgiveness is not something that we have control over. We can't force forgiveness, neither to forgive someone else, nor to forgive ourselves. What we can do is we can create the conditions for forgiveness to come into our life. How do we do that? First step, we admit that we've had a problem and that our problem has led us to behave in ways, to take substances and to behave with addictive behaviors in ways that have created damage. We recognize that we are not a perfect human being, that we have made mistakes. We also recognize that one day at a time now, we're going to work towards righting the ship. And we're going to get an opportunity, if we stay sober and we stay on this clean path, we're going to get an opportunity to grow into a person that we would really want to be. And we're going to have enough energy and enough power to be able to understand the things that have gotten in the way and be able to fix the wreckage and the damage that we may have caused. We will also understand what our strengths are. We will not just be looking at our liabilities. We will understand where we're strong, where our power lies. We'll also understand where our powerlessness is and how that has led to us doing some things that we would not necessarily be able to forgive at this moment. If you're in a state of shame, if you are in a state of guilt, you feel like you can't forgive yourself for something, it is so critically important that you get around a group of people who understand what that feels like. For me, those people are in the various fellowships of 12-step programs. And they really, really do understand because they've been there themselves. And it really takes love, ultimately, for someone to heal from addiction. And if you're feeling that sense of, I'm a bad person because of the things I've done, and how will I ever forgive myself? I don't know how to stop. If you're feeling that, what you need is a big hug, and you need to take a deep breath, and you need to put down the drugs, the alcohol, or the addictive behavior, and get around a group of people that can start to help you move forward in your life. I just can't say enough about the 12 steps in this capacity. It really is where it begins. And there are other modalities of recovery, no doubt. I don't have personal experience with them. We've talked a little bit about smart recovery. I've mentioned it in any event, and there's therapy and therapeutic realities, and those are all going to be helpful too. Something about what happens in the group. Listen, if you're struggling with addiction, or you have, it's the razor's edge. You know, I just want you to make the right decisions to get yourself onto a path of recovery. It's a razor's edge addiction. You are in deep, deep threat when you're stuck in this energy of addiction. It's threatening to your well-being. I want you to make the right decision for yourself and get the help that you need to move out of that. And believe me, I did a lot of terrible things in my life. You know, I'm not defined by those things, and neither are you. That's not who you are, but that may be what you have done. And you will have an opportunity to step into a new life where you can fix that. Believe it is true. It's absolutely possible. So, forgiveness. They say to forgive is divine. To err is human, to forgive is divine. The reason they say to forgive is divine is because it's divine. You can't control it. It's a gift. To get forgiveness, you have to do the work. And that means you need to begin to change and transform your life one day at a time. Next question. How do we rewrite the stories, painful as they may be, from our childhood and move into adulthood free and clear? Okay. So again, we've been doing exercises in this coaching program like rewriting the curses in our heads. That's an excellent exercise, and that's a wonderful process. On a one day at a time basis, we begin to be in community with a group of people who are growing along spiritual lines, simply meaning we're looking in at the experience of our life. We're looking at our mistakes and our successes. We're observing the mistakes and the successes of other people so that we can gain the information necessary to move forward and grow as individuals. If we have curses in our heads, we have stories that we've held on to personally, our addiction stories and stories that have kept us stuck. We begin to tell those stories so that we can expose the illusion of those stories and have other people hear those stories and look us in the eye and say, that story's not true. That's not a true story. Now, you may not believe that at first when a person looks at you and says, you know what, that story's not true. Because a lot of us are so stuck in negativity about ourselves, or we're stuck in our shame, we're stuck in our that cycle of guilt. We may not be able to believe it right away, but one day at a time, we continue to get in front of people who can uplift us and help us to see the illusion of our shame. As I think I've said, Guru Prem said to me once, Tommy, giving energy to the fantasy of your shame will take you to places you don't want to go. Giving energy to the fantasy of your shame will take you to places you don't want to go. Very, very important idea. The fantasy of your shame, think about that. Meaning, the shame that I feel, the feeling may be legitimate, like I feel the shame, sure. But the source of it, no, it's an illusion. I'm not saying that we haven't done things that we are ashamed of, but to be ashamed, to carry shame, means we are inherently a bad person, and that the things we've done cannot be changed, cannot be righted. And I don't believe that. That doesn't make sense to me. So the shame needs to be rooted out. The stories need to be rooted out. We write about them. We do our practices, right? Our mind-body practices. We do our diet, right? We change our diet so that we're supporting our well-being, our energy levels. We begin to go through the steps or another process of reconciliation where we can understand the dis-ease of addiction and how to connect with a source of power greater than ourselves so that we can move forward and clean up the past so that we can release the past, allowing us to become fully present in the present moment. That's how we do it. That's how we do it. That's the treatment for this dis-ease. It's super simple, but very hard. It's not complicated, it's just hard. So I hope that helps to answer your question. And if you're in that energy, remember, stay on your recovery path. There's no drug or alcohol you can take that's going to fix that. There's no, there's no addictive behavior that's going to fix that. Those are just strategies. Addiction is just strategies that you used to, try to apply to a certain problem. It's just a strategy you've used that doesn't work for you anymore. So now we need a new strategy. We need skillful means. And those are some of the ways you can do it. Let's see here. Okay. We have a question about Kundalini Yoga from Kate W. My question for tonight, since I likely will not be live with you, it concerns the safety of practicing Kundalini Yoga without the one-on-one guidance of a living teacher. I have begun to learn about Kundalini through you, and I'm very excited to learn it. But I'm also aware of the warning attached to doing so, especially as a Christian. Can I speak to this? Thank you so much for that question. So I want you to think of Kundalini Yoga that we're doing simply as tapping into your potential as a human being. From the Kundalini Yoga perspective, we say that the potential energy of you, all of the totality of your being, your potential is stored in the base of your spine, literally. And so through these exercises, we are unlocking and releasing that energy so that you can develop into a fuller version of yourself. There's nothing religious about this yoga. So if you're a Christian or any religious denomination at all, there should be nothing in the practicing of this yoga that should interfere with your religious practices. This is a very spiritual yoga in that by practicing, working with the breath and movement and mantra, it will put you in touch with your own deepest desires and your hopes and dreams for yourself. It's spiritual in that it puts you in contact with parts of yourself that go deeper than the physical, which is usually where we're occupied, especially as addicts. We're really focused on the satisfaction of our physical five senses. When we start practicing Kundalini Yoga, we're going to go deeper than that, and we're going to begin to develop a relationship with the subtle. As we develop a relationship with the more subtle parts of ourself, that becomes a very, very powerful process, because now you are starting to get interested in things like quiet, in things like your breath, in things like the flow of energy through the body. None of this is dangerous to your well-being. And there have been a lot of really true nonsense spread about Kundalini Yoga. So especially the way that we're going through it, these exercises that we're doing, there should be no concern whatsoever. I will say, as I've said before, and I'll continue to say, if you're doing a yoga exercise or a physical exercise of any kind that is painful, or you feel like it's not good for you, there's something wrong, then you simply stop. Do not do it anymore, and then write me directly and we'll talk about it. But unless you have an injury in your physical body, this yoga is simply going to help you process through stuck emotion and going to help you move into a more complete, more clear thinking and more focused human being. And I truly wish that for you. That's why we're doing this stuff. Thank you for your question. Someone here is asking me to speak on the sponsor-sponsee relationship. I would be very happy to do that. Whew, wow. The way the 12 steps work is we typically find a human being that we usually meet at a 12-step meeting. And that person will have said something, or they carry themselves in a way that we find attractive. Now, heterosexual men usually are sponsored by heterosexual men. Heterosexual women are usually sponsored by heterosexual women. So it's men are usually sponsoring men and women usually sponsoring women. In the case of gay or lesbian people, that can change. And the reason why we typically have men sponsoring men and women sponsoring women is because to go through the 12 steps is an incredibly intimate experience. And a male-female sexual relationship or any kind of attraction or those kinds of feelings that come up in the middle of that relationship can be damaging, and at best it can be distracting to that relationship. So that relationship is typically held with the understanding that we want to discourage any kind of distraction in that relationship that might result from physical attraction. When we ask somebody to sponsor us, typically they will say yes if they have the time in their life and if they themselves have worked through the 12 steps and can help. There's times where people will ask somebody and they're unable to sponsor you because they literally are going out of town, or they have too many sponsees, or they don't have time. And that's perfectly okay, and you shouldn't feel bad about that. You just go ask the next person. Once a person agrees to sponsor you, well, you're going to get an education in the 12 steps, which is really their responsibility. It's just a sponsor takes a sponsee through the 12 steps and guides them through that process, and it acts as a support to help them along the way. Often, sponsors and sponsees often become friends, really good friends. Sometimes it's more of a sort of a business arrangement. Business not in the sense of an exchange of money, because there is no exchange of money between sponsor and sponsee. But it's a relationship that is just based on the business of getting sober, and sometimes that's where it stays. Is a sponsor is very clear up front. I'm going to take you through these steps, and I can meet you for coffee, and I'd like you to call me if you get into trouble or get into any difficult negative thinking. I'll be there for you. And what a gift that is, if you think about it. It's the only place I know in the world where you can go every single day to get support for free. Something real powerful about that. Now, some of the pitfalls. Sometimes you pick a person and it doesn't work out. You don't get along with them, or they don't get along with you. And so you can always let go of a sponsor and find a new sponsor if it's not working. That's really okay. There's no problem with that. Other pitfalls, what happens if sometimes a sponsor will go out? They'll actually start using again. That's what happened with me. After 3 years with my sponsor, I wrote about it in the book. After 3 years with my sponsor, he ended up going out. And that was very painful and difficult to deal with. But I got through that, and it actually brought one of the most powerful experiences of my life, which again is in the book. We'll come to it. So we'll discuss it later on. I think it's just one of the most wonderful relationships out there. I owe my recovery to people who have sponsored me. There's no question about it. The people that I sponsor now, I consider to be my friends and to be people that I care about deeply, deeply, deeply. And, it's one of the most precious things to go through that process with another human being is one of the greatest honors that I've known in this life. And to have somebody read you their 5th step, which is their personal inventory of their life, is got to be up there with, the greatest honors that someone could give you, to trust you in that kind of way. So I wish it. I wish it for you guys. I wish for anybody to be with a great sponsor, and also to be able to sponsor people. What a gift. Thank you for that question. So let's see. Okay. One quick question. This is from Megan. I love all that I've heard about cleaning up and revamping our diets. What's your take on dairy? Okay, my take on dairy products. I know that you've recommended reducing our meat intake. I don't eat tons anyway. The dairy I tend to regularly consume is fat-free plain Greek yogurt. I know flavored has added sugar, skim milk, and 75% light hard cheese. I would love Tommy to do the cooking, juicing instruction videos. Okay, I will do that. Okay, so dairy. So dairy products. Again, this is going to fall under the heading of there is no one answer for everybody. So I don't have an opinion on dairy products for you or you or you or you or you. I can only give you an opinion about dairy products for me. Here's some things to consider. Number one, the first thing, and this brings up a topic of allergies. One of the most important things that we can do as we're trying to revamp our diet, and I have not mentioned this yet, is to have an allergy, a food allergy test done. You go to the doctor, you tell them you want to get a food allergy test done. They run a bunch of blood samples, and they get sent off to a lab where they can test your blood and your allergic reactions to a whole variety of foods, everything. Meats, dairy, different fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, etc., etc. And you actually find out what works in your body and what doesn't. And that's a great place to begin from, to begin to figure out what the most ideal diet would be for you. Another advanced sort of move in this medical sort of look at what's inside is to get a run of tests done to have your digestive tract, your body's mineralization and vitaminization checked. So how are the levels of different enzymes and different minerals and different vitamins in your body? How healthy are you? How's your protein? How are different factors in your body that can help you really understand what's good and what isn't good for you? Now, these tests are, if you can afford them, there's several $100s each, but these are extraordinary ways to learn about what's really happening inside of you. I've been through this, and so I learned a lot about my diet and was able to make choices accordingly. With dairy, me personally, okay, dairy works for me, but I'm only drinking raw milk or raw organic milk, which I get from the co-op or I get directly from a farm. I'm eating cheese that's organic cheese. Most of the time it's goat's milk cheese. Why? Number one, I love it. Number two, it's goat's milk cheese and products are supposed to be better for you. But the dairy, the milk that I'm drinking is actually cow's milk, raw, unpasteurized, organic. It works for me. It tastes the way I think milk is supposed to taste. It's much better for me than pasteurized milk products. And it's very important to me that the milk I get doesn't come from cows that are suffering and living dreadful lives on a factory farm. Very, very, very important to me. So those are my choices around dairy. One last thing is to try to drink milks that come from cows that have been in pastures that are grass. So grass-fed raw milk is going to be, in my opinion, the best. Now, they say all kinds of things like you have to be careful about drinking raw milk for this reason, that reason, and the other reason. Again, you check with your doctor, preferably a naturopath or a pharmacist and nutritionist who can help you to better understand, what the risks are of drinking these kinds of products. If you're not allergic to milk or the protein casein, which is in milk, you might try a little raw milk. It's contraindicated for people who are pregnant. There you go. I've never had a problem with any of it, and it's always been a joy. In terms of fat-free products, I don't generally believe in them because the concern that I have is not about fat. It's about the kind of fat and the relationship of the different kinds of foods that I'm eating. For example, macadamia nuts are super high in fat, but a great fat, and I want lots of it. I also love coconut oil, which is very high in fat, and I love it, and it's really good for the body. So I'm not worried about fat products. That's not what's actually going to make me fat, as much as people want us to believe that. We need to become more active. We need to eat a little less food. We need to bring more vegetables, green juices into our life, and we're going to find that our body very quickly is returning to a state of homeostasis, balance. Okay. Karen H. Do you have a specific breathing or yoga practice helpful for recovering bulimic? Also, can you recommend a breathing practice for sleep apnea? Wow. Whoo! Okay, those are questions that I'm going to answer next time. So my team member will let me know. Answer the question that Karen posed about a breathing practice for bulimia and also breathing practice for sleep apnea. So let's look at that. Thank you, Karen, for those questions. Sheila has asked a question. Tommy, what are my thoughts about Donna Gates and the body ecology lifestyle? Okay, I love Donna Gates. I love the body ecology book. It really educated me, and I encourage everybody here to read it. It is a very extreme lifestyle. It just takes a lot of planning and a lot of organization, and I think if you go one step at a time and you try certain things and explore for yourself, I think it's a wonderful way to go. If you tried to adopt all of those principles into your life at one time, I think it would be overwhelming and counterproductive. So remember, please go slow. Take your time with it. And just, again, just take baby steps and you're going to be moving towards greater health and wellness. And remember, when we talk about food, we got to talk about moving the body. We've got to be moving the body. Cardiovascular exercise, lifting weights, playing sports, of course, the practice of vinyasa, physical yoga, the practice of kundalini yoga, really keep the body in shape so that we can enjoy the food we have and get into balance with it and be eating to live rather than living to eat. That's the goal. Okay. Couple more questions here, and then we'll call it an evening. Can you speak about the desire to be loved, loneliness, and the desire to be accepted? I think these are human characteristics. I think everybody desires to love. I think everybody experiences loneliness, and I think everybody wants to be accepted. The shadow side of it is when those things become the driver of our behavior because we are out of connection with ourselves, because we are out of touch with ourselves, because we don't realize that we have a piece of the divine within us, then a lot of very painful things result in our life. I have felt loneliness in recovery. When I feel loneliness now, I look at it. I lean into it. Not in a morbid sense, and not for very long, but I want to spend a few minutes not running from loneliness. Do you understand? I want to just spend a few minutes and not run from loneliness and sit with it and just be okay for a minute feeling lonely. And I have that experience. Feel lonely, feel alone. Remember, I'm connected to my higher power. Remember that the piece of the higher power that's in me is connected to everything on the earth and the universe. But I feel this loneliness. I feel there's no one I can talk to about this. But I can talk to me for a moment and not run from it. I can talk to the God of my understanding about it. I'm lonely today. I'd like you to bring someone into my life that I can share my life with. Or can you help me to repair some of the things I've done to help me to forgive myself? Can you help me to be okay with this loneliness so that I can see it just shift into connectedness. But at all costs, please help me to stop running from it, because the ways that I run from loneliness cause more loneliness in my life and cause pain. And then when I'm done with that sitting, maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's a half an hour, I pick up a book, something by Rumi usually, and I read Rumi's words. Gamble everything for love if you are a true human being. If not, leave this gathering. And I realize, yes, I'm a lover. I want to be loved. I want to love. I want to feel connected. And sometimes I don't. And there ain't nothing wrong with me for that. I love myself. And I encourage you to begin to fall in love with yourself. For everything that you've done, I can tell you, if you're in shame, you can't clearly see the full picture. If you're in arrogance, you can't fully see the full picture. But when you return to this present moment and you slowly begin to breathe, and begin to develop the capacity to sit still, and begin to develop the capacity to be sad and have that be okay, and begin to apply the practices to your life of yoga and meditation, the practices of tapping, the emotional freedom technique. If you don't know that, you will soon through Nick Ortner. The practices of eating well, and the practices of getting outside of yourself and picking up the phone and calling a friend and saying, hey, I felt some loneliness today. Could we get a cup of tea? See, that's an act of self-love. That's not an act of weakness. That's vulnerability that shows self-love. Wow, that's powerful stuff. Thank you so much for your question. That's how I can answer it right now. And this comes from Louise. So, Louise, let's talk more about it on our Facebook forum. Let's connect, and let's everybody give Louise a little bit of love, and each other a little bit of love, so that we can really start to understand what we are and what we're not, and understand that this life won't always be about happiness and joy. When we get into these funky spaces, it's actually okay to not run from it. And as we go further and further into our practices together, we'll become better and better at that. Okay. Someone's asking if the Guru Prem interview is posted somewhere. The Guru Prem interview should be on our portal, and I think it's video number 6, if I'm not mistaken. If you can't find it there, let me know, and we'll figure it out. All right, guys, so it's time to go over love missions. I've run a little long tonight, forgive me. Love missions for next week. The love missions for between Thursday and Monday. As we discussed last time, the reading assignment for Recovery 2.0 is to go through Chapter 5. The journaling assignment is to start your weirdness journal. And this is a lot of fun, you guys. You start becoming aware of odd, unexplainable coincidences, synchronicities, just things that you think, wow, this could end up in the weirdness journal this week. Start the weirdness journal and have some fun with that. Now, the challenge from Thursday to now, the challenge was for you to go to one yoga class and to spend 1 hour in the outdoors by yourself. I hope you enjoyed those challenges. The challenge I'm going to give you through the weekend here, and this is an interesting one. You may not like this, This may not be a love mission to you, but it's a love mission to me. Some morning, so it's Thursday, so either Friday or Saturday or Sunday or Monday, when you're doing your sadhana, do it before and complete it before the sun rises. So pick a day, or maybe you already do this every day and that's good for you. That's awesome. But pick a day and do your morning sadhana practice so that you're finished before the sun hits the horizon. So it's different for all of us depending on where we live. Find out when the sun rises and finish your sadhana before. So if you know your sun rises at, say, 5:52 and your sadhana is going to take an hour, you start your sadhana at 4:52. Whatever your sadhana is. Look, if your sadhana only lasts 3 minutes, then you're starting at 5:49. Whatever you got. And that brings me to the last topic. If you've fallen off your sadhana practice, fall back onto it. Start again. Start again. It's not about perfection. It's about cumulative effect of this practice on your body. We're going to go for a little while longer on this particular sadhana, and then I'm going to offer you a new one for you to try. But keep doing the basic spinal energy series and the ego eradicator at the beginning. And remember, please, to tune in with Om Namo Gurudev Namo. And that brings us to the conclusion of tonight's session. Also, if you guys wouldn't mind, let me know how these sessions are going for you. All commentary welcome. It's not about ego. This is about understanding what's working for you and where you may need me to address certain things, or any comments are welcome, and I'm always grateful for them, as long as they're based in love and working on helping us to make this offering better for everybody. Okay, sending you so much love tonight. Let's close with the Recovery 2.0 prayer. Bring the palms together at the heart. Take a deep inhale and a full exhale. And repeat after me. God, put me in the places you want me to be, with the people you want me to be with, doing the things you want me to do. Thank you for the joys and challenges of my life. Amen. All right, you guys, stay on your recovery path. Ask for help whenever you need it. And don't despair. There's a way through every block. Love you, love you, love you, love you. Sat Nam.